Krishna.
Hi Krishna.
So we went for a walk this morning, and it was freezing cold. And we wound up in St. James Park.
Yeah, St. James's Park.
St. James's Park.
Yeah.
And then we wound up having to come in for a spot tea.
I'm having elderflower and lemon tea. It's quite nice.
I'm having lemon and ginger.
Very civilized.
So it's nice music in the background, but anyway, here you are. So we're just going to read from the Bhagavatam. Where are we?
Canto 3, chapter 21, text 8, conversation between Manu and Kardama.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, text 8. Then in the Satya Yuga, the lotus-eyed Supreme Personality of Godhead, being pleased, showed himself to that Kardama Muni and displayed his transcendental form, which can be understood only through the Vedas. Purport. Here 2 points are very significant. The first is that Kardama Muni attained success by yoga practice in the beginning of Satya Yuga, when people used to live for 100,000 years. Kardama Muni attained success, and the Lord, being pleased with him, showed him his form, which is not imaginary. Sometimes the impersonalists recommend that one can arbitrarily concentrate one's mind on some form he imagines or which pleases him. But here it is very clearly said that the form which the Lord showed to Kardama Muni by His Divine Grace is described in the Vedic literature. Sabdam Brahman. The forms of the Lord are clearly indicated in the Vedic literature. Kardama Muni did not discover any imaginary form of God, as alleged by rascals. He actually saw the eternal, blissful and transcendental form of the Lord.
Thoughts?
Yeah. So Prabhupada's pointing out that he achieved success through yoga practice, but this was during the Satya Yuga, when you live for like 100,000 years.
Which is very hard to believe for us, obviously, but we say that conditions...
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, excuse me, please.
Thank you.
So it's not like nowadays, you know, like we were saying, this yoga fad, this, that, the other, and I will become one, I will become God. It is a means of attaining the Supreme, but it is a very ancient art. It's very serious. It's not just, you know, downward dog or whatever they do. So I'm gonna have a cup of tea now.
Yeah, living for 100,000 years is a long time. And also that the form of the Lord that's mentioned is not imaginary. It's not something that's concocted or made up. It's something that's clearly in line with Scripture. And now the Lord has appeared in His personal form. You have to forgive the background music. We can't really do anything about it.
It's like they're turning it louder.
This isn't a new feature that we're introducing in the Bhagavatam Bites, by the way.
It's quite classy, though.
Yeah. Okay, text number 9. Kardama Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is free from material contamination, in His eternal form, effulgent like the sun, wearing a garland of white lotuses and water lilies. The Lord was clad in spotless yellow silk, and His lotus face was fringed with slick, dark locks of curly hair. 10. Adorned with a crown and earrings, he held his characteristic conch, disc, and mace in 3 of his hands, and a white lily in the 4th. He glanced about in a happy, smiling mood, whose sight captivates the hearts of all devotees. Text 11. A golden streak on his chest, the famous Kaustuba gem suspended from his neck. He stood in the air with his lotus feet placed on the shoulders of Garuda. So is the Vishnu formless manifesting. Purport. The descriptions in verse 9 to 11 of the Lord in his transcendental eternal form are understood to be descriptions from the authoritative Vedic version. These descriptions are certainly not the imagination of Kardama Muni. The decorations of the Lord are beyond material conception, as admitted even by impersonalists like Shankaracharya. Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has nothing to do with the material creation. The varieties of the Transcendental Lord, his body, his form, his dress, his instruction, his words, are not manufactured by the material energy, but are all confirmed in the Vedic literature. By performance of yoga, Kardama Muni actually saw the Supreme Lord as he is. There was no point in seeing an imagined form of the Lord after practicing yoga for 10,000 years. The perfection of yoga, therefore, does not terminate in voidness or impersonalism. On the contrary, the perfection of yoga is attained when one actually sees the personality of Godhead in his eternal form. The process of Krishna consciousness is to deliver the form of Krishna directly. The process of Krishna consciousness is to deliver the form of Krishna directly. Interesting. The form of Krishna is described in the authoritative Vedic literature, Brahma Samhita. His abode is made of Chintamani stone, and the Lord plays there as a cowherd boy and is served by many thousands of gopis. These descriptions are authoritative, and a Krishna-conscious person takes them directly, acts on them, preaches them, and practices devotional service as enjoined in the authoritative scriptures.
It says there is no point in seeing an imagined form of God after practicing yoga for 10,000 years. Well, you'd think so, wouldn't it? You'd get a bit annoyed. 10,000 years of yoga and then...
Yeah. I mean, and then it says... Were you finished? And then it says, therefore the perfection of yoga doesn't mean that it doesn't terminate in voidness. It doesn't end like I've achieved perfection and everything's void and everything's impersonal. It actually, it concludes when we understand and see the actual form of the Lord. And it's nice, that Brahma Samhita quote, his abode is made of Chintamani stone. Chintamani prakarasadma sukopa vriksha. You know that?
You're like that lady that gives class in the morning in Ljubljana. Start singing.
Ljubljana.
Okay.
Ljubljana. It's a new country.
Text 12. When Kardama Muni actually realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person, he was greatly satisfied because his transcendental desire was fulfilled. He fell on the ground with his head bowed to offer obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord. His heart naturally full of love of God, with folded hands he satisfied the Lord with prayers. The realization of the personal form of the Lord is the highest perfectional stage of yoga. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where yoga practice is described, this realization of the personal form of the Lord is called the perfection of yoga. After practicing the sitting postures and other regulative principles of the system, one finally reaches the stage of samadhi, absorption in the Supreme. In the samadhi stage, one can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his partial form as Paramatma, or as he is. Samadhi is described in authoritative yoga scriptures, such as the Patanjali Sutras, to be a transcendental pleasure. The yoga system described in the books of Patanjali, is authoritative, and the modern so-called yogis who have manufactured their own ways, not consulting the authorities, are simply ludicrous. The Patanjali yoga system is called Astanga yoga. Sometimes impersonalists pollute the Patanjali yoga system because they are monists. Now Prabhupada's just saying it on purpose. Patanjali describes that the soul is transcendently pleased when he meets the super soul and sees him. If the existence of the super soul and the individual is admitted, then the impersonalist theory of monism is nullified. Therefore, some impersonalists and void philosophers twist the Patanjali system in their own way and pollute the whole yoga system. That's the worst.
What's the worst?
To distort or pollute according to your philosophy, your
speculation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's more to this purport, but it sounds like Prabhupada is basically saying that Patanjali is not an impersonalist, but he's a personalist, and others are twisting his yoga sutras. So let's read.
It's very dramatic music.
According to Patanjali, when one becomes free from all material desires, he attains his real transcendental situation. And realization of that stage is called spiritual power. In material activities, a person engages in the modes of material nature. The aspirations of such people are to be religious, to be economically enriched, to be able to gratify the senses, and at last, to become one with the Supreme. According to the monists, when a yogi becomes one with the Supreme and loses his individual existence, he attains the highest stage called Kaivalya. But actually the stage of realization of the personality of Godhead is Kaivalya. So becoming one and an impersonal realization is not the end goal, but realizing Krishna or the Supreme Lord is. The oneness of understanding that the Supreme Lord is fully spiritual and that in full spiritual realization one can understand what he is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Kaivalya, or in the language of Patanjali, realization of spiritual power. His proposal is that when one is freed from material desires and fixed in spiritual realization of the self and the super self, that is called Chit Shakti. In full spiritual realization, there is a perception of spiritual happiness, and that happiness is described in Bhagavad Gita as a supreme happiness, which is beyond the material senses. Trance is described to be of two kinds, sampragyata and asampragyata, or mental speculation and self-realization. In samadhi, or asampragyata, one can realize by his spiritual senses the spiritual form of the Lord. That is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization.
According to Patanjali, when one is fixed in constant realization of the supreme form of the Lord, one has attained the perfectional stage as attained by Kardama Muni. Unless one attains this stage of perfection beyond the perfection of the preliminaries of the yoga system, there is no ultimate realization. There are 8 perfections in the Astanga yoga system. One who has attained them can become lighter than the lightest and greater than the greatest, and he can achieve whatever he likes. But even achieving such material success in yoga is not the perfection or the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is described here. Kardama Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his eternal form. Devotional service begins with the relationship of the individual soul and the Supreme Soul, or Krishna, and Krishna's devotees. And when one attains it, there is no question of falling down. If through the yoga system one wants to attain the stage of seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, but is attracted instead to attainment of some material power, then he is detoured from proceeding further. Material enjoyment, as encouraged by bogus yogis, has nothing to do with the transcendental realization of spiritual happiness. Real devotees of Bhakti Yoga attain only the material necessities.
Except, I think, in real devotees.
Yes, except only the material necessities of life, absolutely needed to maintain the body and soul together. They refrain completely from all exaggerated material sense gratification. They are prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulation, provided they can make progress in the realization of the personality of Godhead. That's what we were just saying, like it says, real devotees of Bhakti Yoga accept only the material necessities of life that's, absolutely needed to maintain body and soul. We were just having a conversation, as you do, incomings, outgoings, planning what we do, what we don't do. But yeah, we were realizing that, we try to keep it to a necessity. Not that you have to be boring in life or anything, but we all know when there's that line is crossed, when it's just for what, just some
exaggerated material sense gratification.
Yeah.
Terminology.
Sometimes we can use your kids and say, well, we got to go here, got to go there, this, that and the other, because, we need to keep the kids happy. And the irony is you give a cardboard box to the kids and they're happy.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Should we read one more or conclude there?
Maybe just conclude.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for joining us for our morning tea.
Yes.
And Bhagavatam.
Yeah, we could rename it Tea and Bhagavatam.
Tea and Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam Bites. Tea and Bhagavatam Bites.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And Natakoti Vaishnava Nanda Ki Jai. Bhagavad Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. And Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.